Avast me hearties, and be welcome to another seafaring episode of the Atheist Experience. I be your host, Captain Russell Glasser, and here with me is the scurviest scallywag ever to hoist a sail, Grim Martin Wagner Beard.
Arr, and stuff.
Today be Sunday on the 19th day of September, and it also happened to be International Talk Like a Pirate Day. Shiver me timbers! This be a live call-in public access atheist television show based in the landlocked city of Austin, Texas. We take calls from scalawags all across the 7 seas. The Atheist Experience be sponsored by the Atheist Community of Austin, a non-profit educational organization promoting positive atheism and the separation of church and state.
And rum!
Aye!
Aye! Arr!
You can find out more by navigating your vessel over to www.atheist-community.org. When you do, be sure to check out our FAQ page. This show will be live every Sunday from 4:30 to 6 p.m. Central Time on Austin Access Channel 16. Oh no, I lost track of screw it.
I
had more, but I think
that's the hell of it.
That's quite enough. Thank you very much.
Well, I thought you were going to make us do that the whole time.
Okay, let's never do that again.
Ow.
Okay, so if you'd like to watch us outside of Austin, you can check out www.atheist-experience.com and click on live stream at the top of the page. You can also participate in the chat room. You can find audio and video from past episodes. If you click on archive, you'll see a link to all the downloads and the podcast. The nonprofits should be coming back any day now.
They say
or
yes.
any week now. Check out nonprofitsradio.com. Weekly meetings for the Atheist Community of Austin are hosted at Romeo's on Barton Springs Road from 11:30 to 1 every Sunday except for the first Sunday of the month when we host our lecture series at the Austin History Center. And next month's lecture will be October 3rd, and it's something about Darwin. You can join us for grub right after this here program.
Arr!
Threadgill's Restaurant, 301 West Riverside Drive in South Austin, starting at 6:30 p.m. You can get 3 sheets to the wind on grog at the Dog and Duck Pub located at the corner of 17th and Guadalupe every Thursday. And you can get in touch with us at TV at atheist-community.org or check out our blog at atheistexperience.blogspot.com.
Yes. Indeed.
And most importantly, there still be more seats for oarsmen.
It's not the same
Austin
when you don't
Bat
do the
Cruise.
voice. It's just not the same when you don't do it. Yeah.
Oh, I failed.
No.
All right. So there's more room on the Austin Bat Cruise, which is going to be awesome, and it's going to be next Saturday. So if you haven't booked your seat, then check out the ACA calendar or products page and join us.
Indeed.
And there we go.
Okay. Here we are.
Well, that was fun.
Yeah.
I brought my doubloons and everything.
Yeah.
How's the calls looking?
Well, we got a couple up there. We can do that, or we can play a little more WoW. It's up to you.
Oh, shut up.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so let's go right.
Just going to calls
right
because
ahead
it's that
to
kind of day.
Aaron at San Antonio, Texas.
Aaron.
Hello?
Hello. You're on.
Are you there?
Aaron?
Aaron.
Lost him already?
All right.
Hello?
Oh,
hello.
You're back. Aaron?
Can you hear us?
Can you hear us at all, Aaron?
Is there a problem with the phones? We're going to put Aaron back on hold.
I appear to be on.
And then we're going to try him again later, and we're going to see if this problem is with other lines.
Okay.
Sorry, Aaron.
Sorry, Aaron, sorry. That was strange.
All right, we're going to try Randy in Houston. Hello?
Hello?
Hey.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Something is...
Oh, boy.
It's not working today.
It's definitely going to be one of those days. Okay, stay on the line.
Well, great.
Now we're feeding back.
It's going to be one of those days. Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, well, Why don't we just try to wing it with some of these, because we have questions already.
Do you want to? I mean, we've got like news that we could talk about. Stop that.
Guys.
Hello.
This.
What's going on?
Are you being attacked in there? There's like orcs rampaging and like killing you all, and you. Okay, right. Well, we can do a little news.
All right.
Then,
So
come back to some of that, because there's stuff going on in the world.
Yep. See, this is why I come up with news that I don't think we'll wind up using.
Oh, okay. Because you never know.
In case of emergency, you never know.
Such as
Pope Benedict going to England this week and basically declaring war on atheist extremism, by which I guess he means us. So we've got, a pretty powerful enemy in our hands.
No, once you're buggering kids, don't you kind of lose the right to accuse anybody of anything extreme?
Well, now be fair. I don't know that Benedict himself has ever buggered.
Oh no, he's just been covering it
up.
Yes,
yeah.
and enabling and all of that kind of stuff.
Benedict XVI used the first papal state visit to Britain to launch a blistering attack on atheist extremism and aggressive secularism, and to rue the damage that the exclusion of God, religion, and virtue from public life has done in the last century. Such as, the leader of the Roman Catholic Church concluded a speech made before the Queen and assembled dignitaries at the Palace of Holyrood House in Edinburgh with the argument that the Nazi desire to eradicate God had led to the Holocaust, and a plea for 21st century Britain to respect its Christian foundations. Ah, shoot, and here's me without my big list of Hitler quotes.
Well, you mean the one where he talks about eliminating all teachings of Darwin's theory, eradicating all groups.
Right. He shut down a bunch of atheist groups.
Well, yeah, just anything that was set up to ridicule or be critical of the Christian faith got banned in 1933. So
right, he was in real tight with the Pope at the time.
So
he said that by
this is all
the Jew. Anyway,
I can't get too angered by this kind of nonsense, because it's. Well,
standard apologist crap.
Well, it's not only that, but this is very specifically and very obviously an incredibly lame bit of pay no attention to the pedo behind those robes, bit of dodging of responsibility for what everyone is calling them out on, which is the whole sexual abuse scandal that goes back decades, and all the way back to the beginning of the 20th century and maybe even further.
I don't know. I mean, whether or not there are child abuse scandals, they always blame us for everything.
No, but this is very specific, and
but
this is very specific, and it's very timed. It's very obvious that when the Pope, who is facing this horrible scandal, comes out and says something like this, it's very obviously meant to distract people, to be like, oh yeah, okay, well gosh, we did all this bad stuff and we're sorry about it, but gee, isn't it nice that we're not like those atheists?
Is he facing that scandal right now more than ever? I mean, has anything changed since he became Pope?
Well, for the very first time, he has come out and very specifically, pointedly addressed it. Now, he hasn't addressed it in any way beyond to say, gosh, we're really kind of sorry that this happened and we're embarrassed, and boy, this sure is all embarrassing. And that's just been a very weak and I think very dishonest series of apologies, or it may even be honest. I mean, he may genuinely be, starting to feel the shame of this whole series of events. But the point is, as several victims organizations have said, we don't want the Pope to just come out and say he's sorry. We want the Pope, that's great that he's sorry, but we want a Pope who's going to do something. What the Pope needs to be saying is, yes, the Holy See and the Vatican, we are going to communicate with international law enforcement. We're going to root out every single priest who has ever done this. If they're still alive, we're going to defrock them, and then we are going to participate. We're going to assist law enforcement in bringing these people to trial. That's what the Pope needs to be saying. He doesn't need to be saying, gosh, well, the Church has really been humbled and humiliated in this whole affair, and we're hoping that that's good enough.
Right.
Because it's not.
And by the way, whenever the topic comes up,
he's looking for an easy target, an easy victim, that assumes other people hate.
Yeah,
to sort of say, well,
easy targets. But I got to point out,
except
every
he's in
time
England.
this topic comes up about, well, yes, and home of Richard Dawkins and birthplace of Christopher Hitchens.
Yeah, and where religion is is very minor part of the
right. And I got to point out, anytime this topic comes up of atheist extremism, that what they mean by that is exactly what Richard Dawkins is doing, which is going around saying, "Oh, that doesn't make any sense."
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
I mean, as religious extremists go, they have to stretch pretty hard. You know, if people paid more attention to us, I would have us in that category where we're here arguing with people about their religion. That's what they mean by extremism. Right.
Yeah, just the fact that there are now more and more vocal groups coming out saying we don't believe this stuff, we think it's rubbish. One, by the way, we think churches are bad and often do bad things.
Yes.
That alone is enough of an affront to, you know, you're looking at a group of people who have enjoyed a great deal of privilege.
What was that?
This is just, today is what is up, guys. We're looking at a bunch of people who have been enjoying this privilege for centuries and centuries, suddenly finding that the privilege is no longer there.
Right.
It's no longer automatically taken for granted by the public. You know, just because they're wearing robes and dog collars doesn't mean that they're automatically being accorded this respect that's higher than, you know, other secular members of society. And they aren't very happy about that whole situation. So.
Okay, let us see if they have
Okay.
managed to fix the phones, and try again with Aaron in San Antonio. How's that working, Aaron?
Yeah, I can hear you guys now.
Oh, good. Well done, crew. Yes.
Great. What's on your
I had
mind?
an observation that I wanted to kind of present, and it was kind of like a parallel to the way that I kind of justified my atheism towards the beginning when I was a teenager. And one of those things was I would use kind of social examples of why I don't espouse to, let's say, Christianity in particular. And one of those things was the way I would justify it to my peers, because, roughly, 90 to 95% of Americans are espoused to some kind of religious belief, in particular Christianity. And one of the things that I would say was, well, you know what? I don't want to carry on the legacy of those who brought that religion to these shores, because not only did they bring God, they also brought slavery, genocide, oppression, et cetera, et cetera. And so why would if I reject all of those things, why would I then accept the God in which they committed a lot of those atrocities in name? And I kind of felt that it provided me cover. And I know that's not the best answer, but it got me to a point where I could feel to where I could now say, I'm up at a point in my life where I can say, reason and logic are the best answers as to why I deny the existence of God. But in the beginning, when I couldn't really verbalize that, or didn't have an understanding of science and reason and logic, that was kind of the answer that I gave. And I wanted to ask you guys, how do you think, kind of using a double-edged sword, when you're approaching people, yes, you want the best answer for not believing, for not espousing to a religion is reason and logic. But also look at the social implications of what it is you believe, and why would you carry on the legacy of those people?
Here's something I think you have to watch out for, which is you're slipping dangerously close to fallacy territory and saying, there are these people in Group A who did bad things and believed something, and because they did bad things, all of Group A should be dismissed. I mean, it's a kind of ad hominem fallacy.
I think it's a tu quoque, I think.
Maybe tu quoque. What does that one mean?
I think it has to do with, because you're not living in such a way as to reflect the beliefs you claim to espouse.
Right.
Therefore, obviously, the beliefs you claim to espouse just must be false or something like that.
I mean,
I believe that's what it is. I'd have to double check, look it up.
It's the same kind of thing that a racist might use. And I'm not accusing you of racism, but I'm just trying to point out why this argument necessarily isn't the best way to go. A racist might say, look at these black criminals. And there are, anecdotally, black criminals. There are also white criminals, and he would say, okay, I've got a big list of black criminals, and therefore black people are all terrible people.
Yeah, and it's a guilt by association fallacy too.
And
I'm not
similarly,
saying
there
that because you carry on that legacy that you are necessarily a bad person. What I'm saying is, you think it would cause people, it would give people pause and start to think about, well, hey, you know, except
I think it's better to
oppression, and let me. You know, because I would have discussions and they would be like, well, that's true, but that's not what that Bible actually says. And then you get them to read it, and that is what it says to do.
Right. Okay. Now that I think is actually a better starting place, because there is bad stuff in the Bible, and then once they want to, you know, just sort of gloss over it, then we're in the territory of, oh, you don't really believe in the Bible. Where do you get your morals from? It's got nothing to do with the Bible.
Yeah.
That's fine. I just worry about, like, you know, overgeneralizing with a group to sort of paint them all with a bad brush.
No, because that's exactly what the Pope is doing right now.
I was kind of like more of the observation that I use is, or kind of think about this was, you know, I think people in general, really apply reason and logic into every single aspect of their life, because I think that it's kind of indicated in the fact that 90 to 95% have beliefs in a God or gods, and that I think that you can't say that you apply reason and logic to every single aspect of your life when you deny reason and logic when it comes to that particular instance, and that those people that don't that suspend reason and logic when they're coming to in regards to their religious beliefs, you can't really use reason and logic with them in refuting it, because they suspend reason and logic when it comes to that particular belief. And that I'm thinking, well, maybe it might be effective to kind of first appeal to emotional responses or social responses in that regard, and not only attacking the message, but kind of saying, well, look, examine the messengers as well.
Well, I mean, I don't know that fighting a bad and irrational set of beliefs with a bunch of emotional arguments and just the arguments that are just as bad is the best idea. I mean, certainly it may be a way to communicate.
Yeah, that's true.
With
You're
them,
right.
but I mean, you may be in terms of if you're talking in their own language, kind of idea behind it. But I've been engaged just today with. There's been a guy who's been emailing us with some first cause arguments, and I've been responding to him and just pointing out every single place where he's using logical fallacies, and he just isn't getting it. And and not only that, I mean, he thinks that his logic is watertight, and it's impossible to make him see that he really hasn't provided any good epistemological grounds to accept his points of view.
I guess that's where my frustration lies in then, because I feel like, you know, sometimes you come across a piece and you feel like you're talking to a brick wall. I don't know how else to go about communicating, you know, all the different reasons. I mean, the only really reason is to use reason and logic, but I don't know how else to make them budge. You know what I'm saying?
Well, it's just if you really are embroiled in some sort of conversation or discussion with a believer where they're desperately trying to convince you of their beliefs or something like that, I usually find that if you want to just get right to the core of it. Ask them how they are able to distinguish their God from something that they may just be imagining. I mean, how do they know how do they justify this belief, other than through just emotional desire, faith, as Christians term it, or some other means. I mean, Christians will repeatedly assert, this is what I'm doing with the fellow who's been emailing me. I'm just trying to say, you have not provided me with any kind of roadmap, or you haven't explained to me how it is that you determine that the God you believe in is real and not just something you're imagining. How do you distinguish those two things? And he's not answering it. He's trying to evade it. He's trying to dodge it. He's trying to project all the flaws in his arguments onto me, but he's not addressing that very basic point. Now, so even when you do that, even when you come up with something like that, there's no guarantee that they'll respond to it or even know how to respond to it, but it is possible that you still might irritate them enough to make them think about it. And that's not, a waste of time, fully, I don't think.
And I guess, you know, it's hard because I think we're asking, you know, when you like debate science, so let's say if you take evolution, for example, and you're trying to explain reasons for the world or reasons for life in an evolutionary term, and you're fighting with, you know, I took evolution in biology my freshman year for maybe half a semester, and you're going up against, you know, 14, 15 years of indoctrination from the get-go, and it's kind of an uphill battle.
Well, I mean, you know, first of all, there's a lot of independent reading you can do on the subject to equip yourself for those conversations other than just, you know, outside of one semester of education. And second of all, I mean, how should I say this? The stuff that they're coming at, the stuff that they're coming at you with, they're trying to act as if their point of view has scientific credibility of some sort. And it really just doesn't. I mean, this is actually a case where going to the source and figuring out who's saying this stuff and how many people are saying this stuff actually makes some kind of sense. Because if they're going to claim that there is some kind of scientific justification for creationism, then they have to realize that basically there are very few scientists who will make any kind of scientific case for this stuff, and most of them outright dismiss it. I mean, on this, you know, on this particular area.
Well, another way that you can probably address this whole way in which believers compartmentalize, you know, as you mentioned before, right?
Right.
Because they do that, right? The very same Christian who believes in God, who believes in Jesus, who believes that there's a realm of angels and demons, who believes that he's going to go to heaven when he dies, all of which are, you know, fairly irrational, I think, and unsupported beliefs that people hold for emotional reasons. Ask this very same Christian if he believes in the gods of any other religion. Or ask this very same Christian, you know, give him some really ridiculous claim, like drinking Mountain Dew will turn you invisible.
I heard that one.
Right. You know, and he'll be just as skeptical as anybody else. And so at that point, you can sort of bring up this dichotomy that appears to be going on in their heads. I had a Christian ask me on Facebook, basically, well, why don't you believe in God? And my answer was, for the same reason, probably for the same reason that you don't believe in the gods of every other religion other than your own.
Right.
You know, and so ask yourself, well, why don't you believe in Shiva? Why don't you believe in Zeus? Why don't you believe in Ahura Mazda? Why don't you believe in all of the others? Yeah, Quetzalcoatl. Or, yeah, I mean, they have cooler names at least. So.
They certainly.
And once you figure that out, then
get an irrational answer with that. But.
Right.
Yeah,
I think,
and you may get an irrational answer with that. And at that point, you could say, well, maybe their only reason for not believing in those gods is because the Bible says that the Christian God is the real one. Well, you can, but well, if that's your only reason, those other religions have holy books, and those holy books say that their gods are, you know. So, how do you determine? See, this is how you get them to sort of think about how they know what they think they know.
Right.
And do they really know this stuff, or are they just pretending to know things?
Probably a better approach then.
Yeah, Aaron, thanks for calling. I think we're going to have to move on to some other callers.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for calling, man.
See you later. Okay, next we're going to...
Hopefully Randy's still holding.
Yeah, Randy in Houston. Are you still there? Maybe that is his phone.
It's like the revolution's broken out, and they're shooting. Duck! Just get into the bunkers quickly. Yeah, it's not...
Let's see.
It's a zombie apocalypse. That's what it is.
Put him on hold and try him one more time.
Aim for the head.
Third time's the charm. We're going to drop him.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so Randy, you're still on hold for now.
Is this Johanon?
See if we can figure out what's wrong with your phone. And, yeah, I guess Johanon in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Are you there?
Hi.
Hi. How you doing?
Hi. I'm actually a theist. I was introduced to the show by a agnostic friend of mine. And I had a video I put up recently on YouTube, very unusual proof of the existence of God.
I can almost guarantee you that we're not going to watch it.
Well, let him explain what it is, though.
All right, I'll go ahead and explain the concept. He doesn't agree with it outright because he has problems with it, but he thought it was a very unusual argument, and he wanted me to bring on the show to see what you guys thought about it.
Unusual arguments for God. All right, let's go.
Yeah. So I'm in physics, right? That's my major. Now,
Okay.
there's a guy, I don't know if you've heard of him, Roger Penrose. Have you heard of that name?
The Emperor's New Mind?
Yes, exactly.
And, yeah, Road to
So
Reality.
you're familiar with the or hypothesis, correct? The self-collapsing wave function?
Yeah, I actually kind of disagreed with a lot of the book that I was reading. You know, I'm more of a Hofstadterian, but he's not a physicist. But I mean, I'm sort of a fan of the model of the mind that is discussed through a lot of essays in the mind's eye.
All right. Well, let's. And obviously, Penrose's thesis is very controversial, but let's just take it as true for sake of argument.
No.
Something very unusual comes out of it when you do this.
I'm sorry, but I mean, if we're gonna build an argument on top of something that we're not sure is actually true or not,
yeah, let's think of it as a
I'll make an argument.
Yeah, hypothetically. All right.
Yeah, let's think. His hypothesis is.
Okay, so what are we assuming is true first of all?
Okay, let's assume that the self-collapsing wave function mechanism is the same as consciousness. All right. Orchestrated objective production.
Okay,
Yeah.
there's all kinds of fuzzy terms that are not going to be familiar to a bunch of people in the audience.
Yeah, we've got a bunch
starting
of
with assuming that everyone knows what consciousness means.
Or self-collapsing wave functions. Or
Shall I explain the wave function concept?
What?
Yeah, if you want to, sure. I mean,
all right. So
yeah.
I mean,
a
if
wave
you want,
function,
sure.
quantum wave function in quantum mechanics is where you have a particle when it's not observed. It exists in a set of possible positions all at once, and it's sort of mirrored out in a wave pattern.
Right.
And then once you observe the wave function, and I'm not going to, there's these idiots from What the Bleep Do We Know, which are, that's pseudoscience.
Yeah,
But,
horrible movie.
You can observe it with either a mind or an inanimate piece of measuring equipment. And when you do this, what happens is that the wave function collapses and the particle only shows up in one place at a time, okay?
Okay.
So now, whatever the mental observation is, you know, when we observe, we look out at the outside world, we see stuff comes down in our eyes, right? And we can make an observation of it somehow.
Our senses, yeah. Our
very
senses.
fundamental interaction. You know,
Right.
Okay.
Okay, so now, whatever that is physically the same as whatever it is that happens when the inanimate piece of equipment measures the wave function, right? Now, I'm not a dualist, so I'm not going to assume that there's, you know, a matter and a mind. They're two separate things. It's all the same thing.
So
now,
you would
process is that
agree
we do when we observe things mentally.
Wait. So you would agree then that mind is the sort of patterns that happen on brainwaves, basically.
I'm a neutral monist, actually. I'm a little unusual with this, but yeah, mind is it's a entangled mechanism in the middle of the microtubules.
All right, I think we're pretty close in agreement so far.
Okay, so now the observation mechanism is the same thing that is, you know, with the inanimate piece of equipment is the same mechanism that happens when an actual mind observes something. So now that being the case, wave function collapse can be physically equated with the process of mental observation. So now from that, if you have a self-observation, which is, you know, we think of as consciousness, an ego or perhaps whatever, but when you have a self-observation, that would be a self-collapse of the wave function. Now, obviously, Penrose is very controversial. There's a whole lot of, you know, people try and poke holes in various parts of it, but the gist of it is that you can then have a self-collapsing wave function, and that is equivalent to a self-observing wave function, which is therefore a mind, right?
Okay.
Okay, so that's the first part of the argument. The second part, now we're going to go step back a little bit, and we're going to go into, well, this is tied in with quantum gravity, but there's everything in the physical universe has wave functions, correct? You have a...
Sure.
Anything that has energy has a wave function. Now, this includes the wave function of the whole universe.
So you've got, I mean, if I can clarify this some more for non-nerds, when you have subatomic particles, you can't specifically say where they are and how fast they're moving, but you can sort of give a probability distribution of where they probably are, you know, where they're most likely to be, how likely they are to be in particular places. And since everybody is made of very, very small particles, you know, there is a really small but non-zero chance that extremely unusual things can happen when you average out all those wave functions. But since there are lots and lots of particles, the most likely thing becomes more and more likely to happen.
Okay.
Are you with me, Martin?
More or less. I mean, I get the feeling that a bunch of our viewers' eyes are probably glazing over with some of this arcane physics.
I am
so,
a little bit worried about
so
that.
it just can we sort of like do the short version? Are we leading up to?
We're close to the end right now.
Okay. Are we leading up to basically some kind of Schrodinger's God argument? Is that kind of where this is going?
Perhaps, yes.
Okay.
The argument is that there are two types of wave function collapse. The first is the normal one where you measure it with an outside particle. The second was the OR mechanism, which is consciousness. So now, we obviously can see observable stuff out in the universe, so therefore it's not all just fuzzy particle waves. So therefore, the wave function of the universe as a whole had to be collapsed. So we'll assume that some particle outside the universe bumped into it, measured it, and then collapsed it. Well, there's a problem with that statement, correct? If there's a particle outside the physical universe, then it would not be the physical universe anymore because the universe
I don't
is
think
the set of all
anything in quantum mechanics says anything about it having to be outside the physical universe.
Well, no, I'm saying this is not normal quantum mechanics. This is quantum gravity. We're dealing with the wave function of the whole universe as a set.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think we're drifting more and more off into hypothetical stuff that is
Well, no,
like
this is
maybe good science.
This is the starting point of a whole lot of quantum gravity models. This is like a kind of an axiom they start with when they try and hack at the model rather than, maybe this string theory or.
I'm just worrying that this is incomprehensible to the vast majority
here's a problem
of our viewers.
that I'm anticipating with this, which is that as you get more and more into things that arguments for God tend to take the form that, something is true and it couldn't be true without a God existing, and therefore there must be a God.
Right.
But as we get more and more into sort of hypothetical, abstract, cutting edge physics that nobody is absolutely sure about, the idea that so and so is true and therefore forces a God to exist.
Okay.
Doesn't apply anymore. I mean, you wind up having to say.
Still hypothetically, you're saying. So
you wind up having to say this is probably true.
I will comment that the concept of the wave function of the universe is not that controversial. That's just like a kind of universally given with quantum gravity.
Yeah, and
the idea that there needs to be something outside the universe.
My argument is that such a wave function exists.
Yeah, and while this is all certainly interesting to speculate upon, like I said, for physics guys late at night, when it's one of those where ultimately I don't think that it is that you're even talking in a realm that is the least bit relevant to people who are practicing believers, right? Believers in God, Christians, active churchgoers, just your people at the tea parties, whoever, just Sunday go to meeting folks. When they think of the God they believe in, they're not thinking in terms of, why, yes, this whole notion of self-collapsing wave functions this really isn't the core of what's going on in actual religious belief. So while it's fascinating as some sort of intellectual abstruse exercise and thought experiments, it really doesn't get to the core of what real believers believe in, why they believe in it, and how it affects culture.
Another thing that seems to come out is that at the end of these kind of really abstruse, scientific sounding arguments, what you wind up with is now we have this thing and we'll call it God. But it doesn't really, but calling something a God doesn't really capture the full concept that most people have in mind when they say there is a God. When they talk about like whether there's a heaven and a hell, whether it answers prayers, whether things you do sexually are bad to it. If you can just take things and label them God, like you could say, oh, there's a particle outside the universe and I'll call it God. But that's not really more interesting than saying my cup is God.
Yeah, and again, to most believers, I think that an argument like this ultimately would feel very hollow to them, because to them, God is not just some sort of a quantum particle doing quantum stuff, right? It's a big man who, and he loves me, and he sent his son for me, and it's all very anthropomorphized and personal. And while we may dismiss that as silly and mythical and what have you, and a bunch of fables, that really is what's going on in the mind of actual believers. Right. That's the concept of God they take seriously.
Well, I mentioned at I just put this in my video. This is just a generic God I'm arguing for. This could be. I'm personally a panentheist, which is a little bit different than pantheism.
Okay.
The universe is within the mind of God. So it's compatible with. The argument I give itself is compatible. It could be either pantheism, deism, panentheism, and then you could kind of modify it from there into sort of a
So I mean,
the religious, emanation is based.
I guess I'm less interested in how you get to some kind of scientific rationalization that there is a God, as knowing what you believe and why you believe it. As basically, what is the thing that you're calling God? Can you detail what its properties are? What is it like?
It's the wave function of the universe. It's self-collapsing.
Okay,
so,
well, let's say that I believe in the wave function of the universe, and I'll let you label it God. So what?
Oh, yeah. I mean,
So then,
How have we learned
see.
anything new about the universe by sticking this three-letter word on it?
because we've now discovered that because of or, it's a wave function, but it's also a mental wave function.
Well,
it's not a normal wave function where you just collapse it within a particle. Because there are no particles outside the universe, it has to be a self-collapsed wave function, which Penrose points out as a mind.
Right, but if I decided not to call it God, but instead I decided to call it Herman, am I losing any information from that?
No.
Okay.
It would still be a universal mind, though, which I thought was kind of a cool thing to let you guys chew on for a bit there.
I mean, it depends on what you consider a mind. And I mean, collapsing wave functions is something that things without minds also do, I think.
Right.
Yeah,
but I mean, again, it depends on the mind. So
the argument.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
I think you're right. I mean, it's interesting. You're moving into esoteric territories that most actual believers don't really mess with. But yeah, again, I think that you're operating off of Penrose's premises, it does just seem like another way of finding stuff about the universe that you can call God. And until I know, as a scientific layman and as a layman in physics, until I see that there's some sort of that's a legitimate way of looking at the universe, if that's a way that increases my understanding of things, I'm, again, going to be wary to just sort of rush into it. So,
right.
Anyway,
thanks for calling.
If you wanted perhaps a religious component, and this is just a little side thing, this is something other things that, because actually there are a fair number of religious theists in the physics department. I'm not going to get into this right now, but just do a little research on Carl Jung and his association with the physicist Wolfgang Pauli. And I won't get into it now, but just dig out what you see and tell me if it's not a little weird. So
okay. I want to put you on hold because Mark Lowy, our token physicist, actually wanted to have a chat with you off the air. And we're going to move on to other callers. I do recommend The Emperor's New Mind. It's a really interesting book that covers a lot of scientific disciplines, and then it makes some out there claims that some people aren't sure about. But he's a very well written guy. So thanks for calling.
Thanks, Johan.
Yes, sir. Nice
Bye.
to be on.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to give Randy in Houston one more try.
One more. If
Okay.
he's still.
Randy, are you there? 3, 2, 1. Walk the plank.
Zombies got him.
Okay.
Line 2 is.
Wait a minute.
Wait, did you just hang up on somebody who wasn't Randy?
I'm not sure.
Uh-oh.
Was that? Oh no. Is this Randy?
Hello?
Randy.
Hello?
Randy?
Yes.
I believe I just hung up on Pat in Pasadena.
Pat,
and I didn't mean to. Please call back. All right.
How you doing, guys?
We're glad you could finally join us.
Yes.
I am too.
Okay. What can we do for you today?
Well, first let me say thank you guys for doing this show. You guys are like professors of logic and reason. I think that's probably one of the noblest causes.
Professors with no credentials
Oh,
at
no,
all.
we're not. We're not professors of anything. We're just...
Well, you kind of attack things from using logic and reason to
we do our best.
What is and isn't real.
Well, thanks.
Thanks.
But my question is, I'm going to play the God's advocate here. Religion as a world occurrence. The fact that religion occurs independently throughout most of the countries, most of the world, all throughout history, and what implications that could have as far as using it maybe as empirical evidence of something. The fact that it is there, in almost every country. It's very prevalent throughout all of ancient history.
Can you define what religion is?
Belief in I guess a supernatural figure of any kind.
Oh. Okay. So basically, believing in stuff without evidence is a common occurrence.
It appears to be.
Or yeah, and the institutionalization of these kinds of beliefs, right? Like the way they organize and become.
Yeah.
Okay.
Historically, they've all, it's kind of happened independently of a single individual spreading an idea.
Right. But I mean, under that rubric, the things that could fall under the definition of religion are all over the map. I mean, like for instance, we've got people who believe things like God, answers prayers, and then we've got like the Fred Phelpses who think that the vast majority of everybody is going to this horrible, very real, specific hell where they burn forever and ever for being gay.
And now we have self-collapsing wave functions.
Right. You have a guy like the last caller who believed in a self-collapsing wave function. I see the person I hung up on, sorry, said that she believes in spiritual energy. And then
we'll talk to her about that.
You have people who believe in horoscopes. And if there was something to this, you would think that they would converge on some recognizable concept that they agree on, that that actually comes together, instead of believing all kinds of wildly different random claims and then putting them all under the umbrella of one word, which is religion.
Yeah, but I don't know that. I mean, I don't know if Randy's point is that. Well, maybe this means that they're like one particular definition or belief in God must be a true one. Then I think that his point is that it seems to be a universal practice among the human race to just believe in supernatural stuff, to have this desire to think that there is something
a specific,
not
specific labeling of a deity.
And that I think can just be explained.
Some kind of deity in some form, in some different,
And I think that can just be explained culturally in very easy ways. If you look at the earliest beginnings of civilization, and you have people seeking to understand their world and lacking the tools that we have today in a post-scientific world to do it. So in a way, they would see the sun traveling across the sky every day, and then they'd see the moon at night, and they would not really know exactly what these things are, only that they were somehow out there and celestial and magnificent and beautiful. And so naturally they would perhaps build a mythology around these things in order to explain them. I mean, in a sense, if you look at it, superstitious beliefs, not just in gods, but even things like astrology. There was a time during which astrology was the best science people had. And in a sense, there was kind of a logic behind it, right? Because you could look at things like, all right, well, the sun's in the sky, and it helps our crops grow, okay? And then the moon is up there, and we can sort of use it to build a calendar around. So it looks like stuff in the sky affects our lives. So maybe all the rest of these things, all the other stars do that too. So that it was, again, just a process by which primitive cultures, pre-scientific cultures, just sought to understand the world. Now, in terms of coming up with gods about it, well, I think you can look at a very common practice that human beings do as well, which is that we anthropomorphize things. It helps us to put human faces on things in order that we can understand them on our own terms. So gods being a way to put a human face upon this big, vast, empty universe to make it seem a little less big and vast and empty and scary.
Yeah, I mean, even as a kid, do you ever watch raindrops running down a windshield and think, oh, that raindrop's trying to get to that other raindrop, right?
Or just finding pictures and animals in the clouds and things.
Yeah, I mean, people are basically
the man in the moon, right?
Oh yeah, man on the moon.
People are. It could be a very natural evolution of early man trying to figure things out.
Sure, right. Yeah, and then as you form cultures and civilizations, some people learn that it's a very lucrative way to put yourself in power over.
Yeah, and what happens is that people develop some amount of respectability, and they start to mistakenly believe that that because people listen to them, that everything they say is right.
I think that's a really good interpretation of the prophets.
They're able to throw out things that may be wildly off base, but because they're already respected in some other capacity, people will say, "Oh yeah, big man in the sky, that makes sense."
Yeah.
And so people tend to reinforce each other's crazy ideas.
Mm-hmm. I think dissecting the origin of religion and how it kind of came to be and how we've applied it and developed it is really important in understanding, where we stand with religion today. It seems like there's a really big movement of people who are basically tired of it. you know, in all forms.
Yeah,
So
sure.
I appreciate you guys taking the time to take my call. And
Yeah, thanks. Sorry we had
one last thing I'd like to
trouble earlier.
point out to you guys. What do you, just real quick, what do you guys think we should do in light of the fact that most religion very well may be man-made and people come into grips with this, and how should we kind of approach that problem?
Keep arguing.
I
mean,
well, the problem being what? People learning that that religion is a man-made thing.
The fundamentalist faith.
Oh, okay.
People who that we're right no matter what.
Well,
much like Islam. How do you approach that problem in light of the fact that we're kind of uncovering evidence, especially for the God of Abraham, to say that this very likely historically is not true?
Yeah. Well, just keep that freedom of speech thing going and speak your mind, and don't. And this is a reason. You probably saw at the beginning of the show when we were talking about how the Pope was, coming down on atheists and being this is and this is that kind of backlash that what we're seeing are these religious institutions that have for a very long time enjoyed a position of privilege in our culture suddenly realizing that a lot of people don't see them as being all that privileged all that much. They're fallible human beings. They're in many cases guilty of crimes. They're guilty of just as many bad things as the sinners they like to wag their fingers at the pulpit every Sunday. And they don't like being called out on these things, and they're starting to see this authority that they have just enjoyed and taken advantage of, taken for granted for so many years, is being stripped away from them. Now, you're going to get a backlash from them because of that, but you just have to you have to realize that all you have to do is speak your mind, truth to power, all that kind of stuff.
I'm a fan of ridicule.
And just realize that the backlash is going to come, and just say, yeah, I'm sorry, but I'm going to stick to my guns here, and I'm gonna if I see you guys doing bad stuff, I'm going to call you on it.
Well, again, guys, thanks for taking my call, and I still maintain that in the sense of education, you guys are very much professors of logic, and I thank you for it.
Oh, good girl.
Just said we're not.
Okay.
Okay.
Well,
thank you for calling.
You're too kind.
And we mean it.
Yes.
Okay. Line 1, I guess, would be Pat. Pat, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Sorry we hung up on you.
Sorry for hanging up on you.
See?
It's okay.
How you doing?
I'm doing fine. How are you?
We are well.
Thanks.
I just want to say I'm so grateful that you guys have this show. I just started listening to it. I just started listening to it I guess maybe a couple months ago, because my son listens to you religiously.
That's a good way to listen to us.
But excuse me. What I wanted to say is, first of all, the people, the Christians out there, first of all, I want to say to be Christian means to be Christ-like. The word Christ comes from the Greek word Christos, which means God and man, which is the spiritual energy. And the reason I say it's spiritual energy is because it's invisible. You can't see it. And that's why I call it spiritual. And the thing about the Bible is...
wait.
Hang on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. Go ahead. Keep going.
Okay, and the thing about the Bible is, those stories are written in allegories, and they aren't supposed to be taken literal. But the people that put those stories together, organizations that put them together, knew, because of the ignorance of people at the time then and now, that people would not delve deep into themselves to realize that these stories were not intended to be taken literal, and they have taken them literal because that was the point. And they were made like that for control and power, and for certain groups of people to be superior over all, which is not the truth of what life is all about. But the hardcore Christians, when it comes to religion, it's like they leave their brains outside the door. They can think about everything else, but when it comes to religion, they go totally stupid.
So your point is that you think that essentially Christians are missing the point.
They are totally missing the point. Yeah. They are totally missing the point. They have been systematically, deliberately deceived and misled into believing something that's never going to happen, something that's never going to take place. And if you understand, I look at the way of comprehension. A lot of that stuff is the allegories, and the allegories are stuff that you have to figure out for the deeper meanings and messages. And if most people can't follow a regular book written in plain English and pass a comprehension test, how are they going to read the Bible, which is written in Old English and has been transferred so many times? And you can't even, how are you going to understand that when you can't understand simple stuff? And the thing about religion is Jesus never said he died for anybody. He never said any of those things. And he's not the Savior. what he did was I read this stuff, and I understand it because I use the power within me to understand this stuff.
Okay.
And excuse me?
Yeah, we're going to ask you some questions now.
Right.
Okay.
Sure.
So you say that everybody else is reading the Bible wrong and you're reading it right. Is
no,
that
what
right?
I'm saying is they are misunderstanding that those stories are allegories.
Okay.
Okay.
And allegories are stories that that are written but not to be taken literal because they have a deeper meaning and message.
So the whole story of Jesus, is that an allegory or was there a Jesus?
Jesus was a prophet.
Okay. How do you know that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Is this, in other words, what we're asking you is, you have an interpretation of the Bible that you're telling us right now. You say it's a collection of allegorical stories. Fine.
Yes.
And there are other Christians out there, and institutionalized churches, what have you, and they have interpretations of the Bible that are a lot more literal than yours. Yes. This is all well and good. The problem is, how do you propose to demonstrate to someone people like us outside of the fold that yours is correct, theirs isn't, that there is really any more reason to believe in, say, the reality of what you call the spiritual energy any more than there is to believe in a deity in the heavens or Jesus as some sort of transcendent being?
Right.
That's kind of what we're getting at.
Don't get me wrong. I mean, we're with you on a lot of stuff, like, they believe in a lot of silly things like the rapture and a literal flood and stuff
they
like
believe
that,
in, they claim to understand
allegorical.
things that they can't that they don't actually understand. We agree with you there too.
Right, but you're also telling us, I mean, I assume you're implying that the Bible is still kind of a book of revealed truth from the creator of the universe. It just doesn't say what they think it says. Am I right about that?
Yes. Yes.
So I mean, where we part company, of course, is that the Bible has any use in understanding some fundamental truths about the universe. I mean, can you enlighten us a little bit about how you came to that conclusion?
Okay, sure I can. Well, what happened, have you heard of chakras, like the chakras inside the body?
Yes.
Yeah, but that's not really a Christian concept, is it?
Hold on. Have you ever heard of out-of-body experience?
Yes.
Yes, but they're generally
they
generally don't stand up under investigation.
Okay, hold on.
Yeah.
Hold on. Back in 1975,
I want to see how this
God, which I call God, and I call God because it's a higher energy, a supreme power that exists inside me.
Okay.
It's the power that I'm made from. The energy that I'm made from in form. Because without form, it's just invisible energy. With form, it's you, me, and the physical universe. Mm-hmm. And I tapped into this energy back in 1975 when I had no idea that it exists, because I was brought up traditional religion, Baptist.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I tapped into this religion. I mean, into this energy inside myself, but it's inside me. I tapped into it.
What does tapping into it mean exactly? What happened?
I mean, I was in a state of meditation, and I was asking myself, who am I?
Okay.
And I didn't get anything for hours.
Okay.
Now all of a sudden, I felt this calm inside my body that was deeper than I was big, and it scared me. And so I found myself, like tensing up. And in the top of my head, with my eyes closed, I see the words, "Don't be afraid." I hear myself answer, "Okay." And I'm looking inside myself with my eyes closed. I could see, and I felt this energy. I was ready to coming up through me, like a hum, like I was getting ready to take off in a rocket or something. And when it got to the top of my head, it just opened up, and I'm laying on my bed, and I see myself walk outside my body.
Okay.
And I'm looking at myself, and I'm going, what in the world is going on? And I travel to the ends of the earth and back in seconds. In seconds. In literal seconds.
Okay.
And I had this incredible experience, had no idea what it was.
All right.
And I was telling everybody about it, and they thought I was crazy. And I found one lady who understood metaphysics. She said what that was gifts of the spirit that I had tapped into a part of myself that most people would never, ever get a chance to, and I must have something to do.
Okay.
So suppose...
let us ask...
You go ahead,
and then let me think. Because of this stuff, I brought 2 people out of a coma that the doctor said they weren't coming out.
Oh, really?
Because I had experience of the astral world, the invisible world. I had been there.
Okay.
The reason I know about the life process and how it works...
You're going to have to take a break here so that we can have a dialogue.
Yeah,
okay.
we really... Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, so the long and short of it is that in 1975 you had an experience that was extremely profound. That sounds a lot like experiences that a great many friends of mine have had that are called hallucinations. Are you familiar with that concept? I mean, are you familiar with...
Hallucinations are usually drug-induced.
But not necessarily. I mean, the brain is full of chemicals, and and sometimes those chemicals can make your brain do interesting things. You can have, for example, in the regular sleep state, you can have what's called either a hypnagogic or hypnopompic hallucination.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's when you're awake but you're not quite, and
right.
You know, so things. So in other words, the brain is a fascinating thing, and all kinds of stuff can happen to it to make it function in an altered state.
It's actually not the brain; it's the soul working through the brain.
Yeah, but see, here's the thing: is that we know brains exist, and
right.
we don't. You know, we don't really know. We haven't really gotten any evidence here that souls exist. I mean, we know that believers claim that they do, but you know, with that lacking evidence for a soul, we're kind of left with the brain here, and it does sound like, you know,
well,
your experience sounds like any number of hallucinations.
Everything that exists in the material world already exists in the invisible world, because I've been there.
Pat, let me ask you a question, because
sure.
I mean, you're telling us about experiences that we haven't had. So I want to ask you, what would happen if I introduced you to somebody and he said, one time in 1975, I was in a state of deep meditation, and all of a sudden, Jesus appeared in front of me, and he told me specifically that every word of the Bible is literally true, that Noah's flood really happened, that there's a real hell, that all this stuff is exactly what it says in the Bible. Would you believe that guy?
No, I would not. You know why I wouldn't believe him?
Why?
Because, first of all, it goes against the principles of the universe.
But from his point of view,
the laws of the universe are immutable.
But from his point of view, the stuff that you're saying would go against what he thinks is the principles of the universe. So, I mean, I think you'd be right not to believe that guy's experience, no matter how convinced he was that he had figured something out about the way the universe works. Are you with me there?
I'm with you.
Okay.
So, can you see why it's a little difficult for us to go along with you when you tell us that you went to the universe, the ends of the universe, and back in seconds, and found out stuff that we don't know?
Well, this is how too. And another thing, I mean, I had so many experiences that I took those experiences that I had and I acted on them. And this is how I learned.
Well, that's fine, but I mean, it still doesn't. It still doesn't get us back to.
And it proved it. And it proved it. I mean, the way I found out that the stories were allegories, I was told from within, and it's like a veil lifted from my eyes to let me see the clues. See, the Bible is full of clues.
Well, but that's exactly what a fundamentalist would say when they tell you how they know that the Bible is literally true, wouldn't they?
You know what?
Mm-hmm.
The things are changing in the world because, first of all, people are tired of all this foolishness they've been told because they don't see it. They've been told that Jesus died for us.
True, I'm not sure the cure for that is more bullshit.
Yeah, I mean,
I know, but Christians believe that.
Yes,
Christians believe that.
We know.
I mean, but what they don't believe is this is the physical, material world. They think that Jesus went to prepare something for them. The invisible world, or the spirit world, because it's invisible, is just that invisible. There's nothing to prepare.
Yes, but see, Pat, this is
here on Earth while you have a body.
Right, but okay. Let me just go ahead and ask you essentially the same questions that I ask a traditional Christian. All right, which is fine. Okay, we've heard your claims of having these experiences. Fine. Since we did not have these experiences, right, and since we weren't privy to this very personal experience that you had,
right.
What I would ask you is, how do you propose to demonstrate to us that these things are real as opposed to something that you just imagined? Okay? How can you demonstrate to us that your experience was an actual real experience that you had and not just an imagined experience?
Okay, I'll tell you this. Okay, I'm listening real carefully. When I had another vision. I mean, I had them all the time, but this was real a lot. In 1978, I had this vision. I traveled inside myself instead of walking outside my body. It's like my whole head opened up, elongated, and it's like I was watching television in the top of my head.
Yeah, okay,
but
so wait. Yeah, I don't think you're understanding the question.
Yeah, you're not.
I'm going to tell you. I saw this stuff come whirling in front of me. I had no idea what it was. It was like tadpoles going everywhere. And I said, I heard myself inside say, what in the world is that?
Yeah,
This voice inside me said, pregnant. I said, pregnant? Oh, my God. I said, it's a boy or girl. The whole situation changed. Long story short, I went to my doctor. Didn't have no more sex because I wanted to make sure, because everybody by now thinks I'm crazy. I wanted to make sure that I heard what I heard and I saw what I saw.
Okay.
The doctor told me that I wasn't pregnant. I didn't have no more sex. Went back in 6 weeks. I was pregnant. They did a birth injury with my son. They told me when he was born that he may not live because he had a very traumatic birth.
So let me make sure. Let me make sure I'm clear on this. You were hold on. Stop. Please stop, or I'll put you on hold.
I'm sorry.
You were having sex before this.
She's on hold.
She is?
Yes.
Okay. I did want to ask questions.
Well, she wasn't going to allow that. Pat, here's the problem.
For a person to be having regular unprotected sex and then wonder if they're pregnant and then come up
Russell,
with
that's not even the issue here. The thing is
right.
what she is using as a way of demonstrating to us, the proof that she is giving us of the validity of the experience she had in 1975 is to tell us about another hallucination she had in 1978. I don't think you understand, Pat, how to distinguish between something that really is happening to you and something that you were just imagining is happening to you. I'm sorry if that sounds unkind, but this is just where it's coming from in our perspective. I don't think that you are really able to distinguish fantasy from reality at this point. You've had a lot of what I don't disbelieve you. I don't think you're lying to us when you claim that you have had these kinds of experiences. I think that you're just an individual who has either hallucinated or who has interpreted dreams as reality, or the memory is a funny thing. I mean, you're talking about events that happened to you 35 years ago. So you've had 35 years to construct a narrative around what you think these experiences were.
Right.
All right? So this is why these aren't really proofs to us. I mean, we think that something's happened to you, but we don't think it proves anything other than you've had experiences that you're trying to explain in these ways. So thanks for calling, Pat, but I really don't know that there's any further we can go in this conversation. I think we should let her go and move on.
Just drop it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you for calling, but yeah, it's just, and I only put her on hold just because she wasn't letting us get a word in.
Yeah, but I mean, the thing is, when you asked something like, how can you convince us that this actually happened, that entails some kind of actual physical evidence. I mean, even if the prophecy that she said she was, or the vision that she said she was having, turned out to be absolutely 100% the way she says she imagined it, she's only telling us now, 40 years later, or 30 years later, that she had these visions, which lo and behold happened to precisely match the things that turned out to happen, and we don't have any way of verifying that. Just like we don't have any way of verifying that the stuff in the Bible that supposedly predicted other stuff in the Bible, not only can we not prove that the prophecy came true, but we also can't prove that the prophecy actually happened when they said it did.
Yeah. Well, that is. That was kind of my point, is that these are unverifiable.
I was just trying to clarify your
unverifiable
point,
personal anecdotes. Yes. Well, we're just professors of logic.
Absolutely.
And yeah, I guess so. Sorry to just kind of cut you off like that, Pat, but it was starting to kind of grind the show down. Speaking of the show, let's move on.
But you know, this is kind of instructional for the guy who was wondering how people come up with this religion stuff in the first place.
Yeah, our previous call.
You come up with weird things, and then you come up with weird explanations for it, and then you get enough people to believe you, and then sooner or later you've got a religion.
Or just some sort of elaborate belief system of some kind.
Okay, I think we need to prioritize Chuck just because he's in Austin.
Yes, why not?
Hello, Chuck.
Hello.
How you doing?
Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
You're welcome.
Yeah, what that lady was describing, Pat, I actually experienced the same thing. It was at Nickel Beer Night at West L.A.
Oh.
Well, that's
anyway,
cheating if you do it with beer.
Earlier, you had somebody talking about whenever these people start comparing religion to science, I can't help but point out, all I have to do is say, remember Galileo. And I mean, the Galileo, who is considered the father of modern science, proved that the Earth revolves around the sun. And the Catholic Church had been preaching that the Earth is the center of the universe. And whenever he proved them wrong, they locked him up for the remainder of his life.
And so, he got off easy.
You know, if if religion is anything, it is the anti-science.
But also remember the convenience of hundreds of years passing and none of the people who actually locked up Galileo still being alive. And so people who are religious are now free to spin stories like, oh, well, actually, those were Catholics and they're nothing like us. And really, when you come down to it, they didn't, you know, they were atheists if you look at it in a certain way. Believe it or not, I've actually heard that stuff.
Right, yeah. Exactly. But
so, I mean, by the time that Galileo's scientific discoveries come to be common scientific knowledge, the church was able to just disavow any, you know, oh, those guys weren't true Christians.
Well, they also, the Vatican apologized, you know, within the last century.
Yeah.
For their treatment of Galileo.
John Paul.
Yeah, John Paul, and he did. But what's interesting is when you look at their apology and read the wording of it, right? It doesn't. You don't get the impression that they're apologizing because, well, it's wrong to imprison a man for his views that are in conflict with the received dogma of the church.
Yeah.
You know, that was actually, you know, they weren't acknowledging that. You know, they weren't acknowledging the simple. They were just saying that this was, well, you know, not the way to have dealt with the situation, and they weren't acknowledging that Galileo was right and the church was wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so...
I mean, you know, if anything, they've sort of reinterpreted scriptures. I mean, religion evolves, just like any other beliefs.
Well,
so that
the
now
Old Testament and the New Testament, you know, they had to rewrite the Bible.
There's that. But, I mean, neither of those turned out to be right anyway, so they had to come up with sort of shoehorn biblical concepts into facts which were established by science that had no input from religion, and then religion comes along and gets to take credit for that, which is why now you have like Muslims saying, oh, if you read it right, the Quran actually predicts exactly what the speed of light was, and nonsense like that. Religions love to do this, to take credit for stuff that they used to oppose.
Oh, sure, yeah. It's like these creationists. You know, they take one sentence from the Bible, God created the universe and everything in it, and they try to come up with a science class out of that.
Yeah.
Well, it's
interesting.
mark
my words, in another 200 years, the church will be finding all kinds of verses that show how perfectly the Bible described evolution.
Yeah. Yeah. I think what you're seeing now, I think, in the relationship between religion and science, you know, ever since we had that wonderful Enlightenment thing, and churches were no longer allowed to run all of Western civilization, as it were. We now have this interesting relationship between religion and science where the most ardent fundamentalist religious believers, on the one hand, deplore science and they resent science because it comes up with this annoying stuff like evolution. And depending on how hardcore they are, heliocentrism and what have you. But on the other hand, they recognize that in our modern day culture, science is the agent of intellectual prestige. If you actually want to prove something, you got to do it scientifically using the scientific method. And so now you get you get these creationists, you get these guys like Kent Hovind and Karl Baugh getting their fake mail-order degrees so they can call themselves doctor and spouting these pseudoscientific theories and again, it's putting on the pretense of it's cargo cult science now is essentially what they're doing. I think, well, we'll put on lab coats and we'll put the word doctor in front of our names, and we'll write very laughable little papers and call them our doctoral dissertations. If you've ever read Kent Hovind's dissertation, and we'll set up little groups and we'll call it the Institute of this and the Institute of that, and to sound all scientific. And if we go through the motions of science, suddenly our superstitious beliefs will be scientifically valid and respectable, just like all that actual science that the eggheads at universities do with their darn grants and research and stuff. Doesn't quite work that way, and they don't really get it, but they know that they at least have to put on the show, even if the show is really lame.
Yeah, well, these creationists, they want to just wipe out 1,000 years of scientific study that's based on observation and documentation.
Well, be fair, evolution is only 150 years of observation.
Well,
and
Darwin's
documentation.
theory, yeah.
Yeah, well, actually, medicine would literally be 1,000 years ahead if it were not for the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church outlawed study of
anatomy,
corpses is what they'd outlawed. Study of corpses for about 1,000 years.
Yeah, right. We would definitely be perhaps a lot farther along in a lot of things had it not been for the the church in many ways. It's difficult to say if it's going to be 1,000 years or a couple hundred or what have you. But yeah, I think that certainly in some things, definitely in medicine, we would be a lot farther ahead than we are. I mean, the Muslim world in like the 13th, 14th, 12th to 14th century was actually much farther ahead in medicine than the West was.
In the 800s, I think they were the world leader in mathematics and science, and then, they just kind of went downhill from there.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's possible we may have had germ theory a couple hundred years before we actually did, and what have you, had it not been for religious meddling about, oh no, corpses, you can't, that's, you can't do that, it's sacred stuff.
Anyway. Thanks for calling.
Great. Hey, listen, I'm always happy to bash religion.
Well,
okay.
Alrighty then.
Thanks for letting me.
You're welcome.
Thanks for the call. Thanks for watching.
We're always happy to bash religion also.
I was really feeding back on his call very
I know. Although we do also promote positive atheism.
We do.
Which means, and speaking of that,
rum.
Yes.
Grog. Yes, grog.
And coming to Thread Gills after the show.
And
after the show at 6:30, we're going to be meeting at Thread Gills on Riverside. And nice eye patch, Martin.
Why, thank you.
My
out-of-control pineal gland is no longer. Yes.
Yar.
Arr.
Anyway, yes, and also I just want to say one more time that the Bat Cruise is next week. So if you've been putting off deciding whether you're going to come, you should totally come, because there are people from like all over the world, and it's just a giant boat full of atheists, and bats poop on you. Well, not really, but
they
sometimes
could.
they do.
That's because
but it's still cool.
Yeah.
Boy, I'm a terrible salesman.
The pooping thing probably could have.
Okay, so let's see. I'm actually, I gotta go with Sam, also in Austin.
Okay, well, how long is James?
All right, James has been on it for a while. Hang in there, Sam.
Yeah,
James, St. Louis.
Yes, thank you.
How you doing?
Good conversation you guys were having last time. Do you hear me?
Yes, just fine, thanks.
Okay, I wanted to talk a little bit about the genetics of God, and to preface this, I'm an atheist. I have been all my life, but I just, the past couple of days I've been entertaining the idea of Jesus Christ as only a hybrid God. So, little course in...
he gets better mileage than a typical guy. Yeah. I couldn't resist
Sorry, what was that?
He gets better gas mileage, because he's a hybrid.
Yeah, exactly. So, some of them...
I got 1 million of them, folks.
True.
Okay. Try the deal.
Sorry.
So we get half of our genes from our mother and our father, obviously, and when they combined, they form a zygote, and so remove all the science talk out of it. Mary contributed half of her genes to Jesus, and God contributed half of his genes to Jesus. So if you really want to use this with a little bit of scientific scrutiny, you can assert the idea that Jesus is actually half man and half God. But if you want to even extend it a little further and take mitochondrial DNA into the equation, Jesus is actually a little bit more percentage of man than God.
Okay.
And,
well, the problem with religious
Didn't
beliefs
think of that,
is
did you, Kenthoven?
You can't really get too detailed with the science. I mean, you listen to a guy like Hank Hanegraaff, the Bible Answer Man, and I believe he'll say something like, Jesus is paradoxical in that he's 100% God and 100% man, and it's like, well,
you get the special pleading stuff.
That's 200%. That doesn't even make mathematical sense, let alone scientific sense.
Or maybe they'll just say that God's DNA was just so super awesome, right? That it just completely overwrote
Mary.
the end of Mary's. And but yeah, But then again, perhaps you might just get some Christians telling you, well, duh, but that was the whole idea, because, you know, God intended Jesus to be human so that he could be crucified and sacrificed and take on male sin. So, and if he was 100% God, they couldn't, you know, kill him. So you had to,
worse yet, I mean, you'll get people who are claiming that the less scientific sense it makes, the more proof that is that it's true, because nobody would make up such nonsense.
Sure.
So,
but I guess what you've got is just a really fun way to like confront a Christian at a party and make him go, "Dude, shut up, man, you suck." Yeah. I mean, it's just like it's just fun.
Right.
But
if you have nothing better to do,
I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, but I was also kind of
it does sort of lead one to speculate what, you know, just, you know, God's DNA, right? I mean, you know, right? It's just sort of what all is. How is that? You know, the properties in it that just make it.
But that's what happens when you apply like our common time scientific knowledge to the almost laughable things that happen in the Bible. Because if you think about it, I don't want to say for certain, but it was probably highly probable that way back then, when they had a rudimentary understanding of how biological things functioned, and to try to be as non-crude as I can be, these gentlemen way back when would be doing whatever they are doing, and stuff would come out of their, you know, right. And they see it and they say, "Oh, that's my seed. I plant my seed inside of a woman just like we plant grain seeds." And so it's like, obviously this is coming from me. The woman is just a vessel for my seed, and that's why I'm like so much better than her, and she's only there so that I can propagate my sons and all that stuff. And it's only now.
Yeah, that patriarchal thing got going real early. So yeah, when they figured that part out.
Yeah.
Right. So.
Okay. Thanks for calling.
Yeah, appreciate it very much. Yeah.
See you later. Now we've got Sam in Austin. Thanks for waiting, Sam. Are you there?
Yeah.
Hi.
Hi. I wanted to say something about Pat.
Oh, be nice.
She seemed to be trying to get to an idea about literalism, and this idea of literalism, as opposed to reading stories and looking for higher meaning and metaphors, and she used the word allegory, and I think there's a larger point to be made around that, and I'm going to try to put a unifying theme around all this jungle of specifics, and say that I think you cannot separate politics from religion, and that within politics, just as within religion, or vice versa, you have the people who seem to worship the past and these ideas of literalism, for lack of a better term, as opposed to people who are trying to break free of the traditions and move to a higher level of understanding, which seems to be more about agreement as opposed to disagreement, and
have we
universalism as opposed to segregation and denominationalism and the different religions. There seems to be moving towards a point where people can see how they're the same rather than how they're different.
No, I mean, I agree with that stuff. I just think that the point at which we start to question her is where she comes up with all this stuff about chakras and traveling across the universe. It's not that I think she's wrong that you should treat the Bible as an allegory, or even that it has some valuable stuff in there if you read it as poetry or literature. It's just that I don't think the Bible has any special claim to knowledge, and this stuff that happens inside your head is not any special insight into the real way the universe works. But we're running out of time on the show, and I would give you longer, but I think there's a caller that we'd like to get to and spend the last 10 minutes on. So,
okay.
All right.
Thanks for calling.
Sam. All right. So now we have Troy in Edmonton, Alberta.
Hi.
How you doing?
Hi.
Hi. Hi, so we had our discussion today by email, and I posted it on biblicality.com.
Yes, and just a little, give our viewers a quick a prequel here. Troy and I have been discussing today. He sent a question in, and having to do with origins, and he and I have been discussing back and forth and arguing back and forth about a lot of the arguments that he's been putting forth for God. So that's the discussion he's been talking about. Can you give
our your viewers a URL so that they can check out this stuff?
It's simply biblocality.com.
Biblocality.com. Okay.
Just like it sounds.
Okay. B-I-B-L-O.
Got it. Okay. Go on.
And so basically, I think our discussion is, I believe that something can't come from nothing because that which doesn't exist can't produce nothing. Nothing always comes from nothing. So that's a silly argument. And you can't really say there's an infinite regress, because if there was an infinite regress of nature, you would have had an eternity for us to have come into being, for example. And we would have had more than enough time for that to happen. Well, an infinity, so it should have happened already. Why didn't it happen yesterday? So on that very same page, I even posted a video by William Lane Craig who gives basically the same argument. We're saying that doesn't make any sense, and he does some mathematical calculations to show that that's silly. So basically then, if the universe can't come from nothing, and it can't have always existed, we really are left with no other option than the uncreated creator. So the question then becomes who he is. So you can compare, and you come to Jesus Christ. Well,
see, this is where we kind of this is the problem that I had with your drawing of that specific conclusion, is that even if the only option that you present is an uncreated creator, okay? What you have to do, first off, is explain then how it is that this creator manages to be uncreated, how it is that this creator, if it is uncreated, avoids the problem of infinite regress that you would have with an eternally existing universe, because the fact that creation is a causal process, right? Something doesn't exist and then it gets created and now it does exist. Because that is causal, you have this creator existing, I think, essentially in a causal state, in a temporal state. So why then would this creator...
No, he's uncreated. He exists outside of time by the evidence that nature can't have always existed.
But where do you have... what evidence do you have to present? And again, this is what we addressed in our email exchange, that there is a realm outside of time, and if there is such a realm,
you don't have to understand it, but you have to accept it by the evidence.
We don't have to accept anything if there's no evidence for it. And
the evidence is that there cannot be an eternity of the past of cause and effects, and the universe can't come from nothing.
Let me cut to the chase here. Yeah. Is there something that exists without having been created?
Is there something that exists without having been created? Yes, that is the uncreated creator.
Okay, then what are its properties, and how do you know that?
Well, we know who he is specifically. We know he entered into his creation through the person of Jesus Christ.
No. How do we know that? What does that have to do with it? Wait, what does this? Wait, no. What does this have to do with the uncreated creator thing? You're starting with this abstract philosophical concept, and then you're just jumping to. But I believe the stuff. But I believe the stuff that's in the Bible. If you're just going to argue from the Bible, then why didn't you start there? What is all this abstract, quasi-pseudo-philosophical stuff?
Well, here's the problem, and I hope that I had made this very clear in our email exchange. You are asserting the existence of an uncreated creator.
No.
You are asserting the existence of
an uncreated creator.
You're asserting the existence of a
realm. There's no other option available. Since nature can't have always existed and can't come from nothing, you're left with no other choice than an uncreated.
How do you know that is the only other option, though?
However painful that is to our heads to accept.
How do you know that that's the only other option?
That's right.
How do you know that that is a false dilemma? I'm asking you. How do you know that you are not committing the fallacy of the false dilemma?
You have to present the false dilemma if there is one. I haven't heard any from you.
The false dilemma that you're making is because in the natural universe thing you can't have infinite regress and you can't have something coming from nothing. Therefore, the only other possible option is not just an uncreated creator, not just any uncreated creator, but the uncreated creator that specifically happens to be the biblical God.
And how do you know that? The biblical God is because you personally can't find a natural explanation for the origin of the disciples' belief.
What stops me?
So if we can't come up with it with a specific explanation, then we must assume that your magical story about a book thousands of years ago, which describes a detailed story about a god coming to Earth, must be true because we can't think of something else.
That's right.
Okay. All right. And you don't understand why that's the argument from ignorance fallacy.
And it shouldn't be that complicated, because it's just a simple
It's not that complicated. It's nonsense.
You don't understand why that is the argument from ignorance fallacy.
That's why you prove Jesus is God, and that's why you're actually leading people to Christ on your program, because they can see you can't come up with a naturalistic explanation.
When we point out that you're making a logical fallacy, that I hardly imagine that that's leading people to God, unless, like you, they don't understand what logical fallacies are. I pointed out a stream of logical fallacies that you've made.
What you're doing is you're asserting a logical fallacy, but you haven't actually
I'm not asserting a logical... The logical fallacy that you're making is a classic argument from ignorance, because you guys don't have a natural answer. My magical answer has to be right.
Is a classical argument from ignorance, isn't it?
Excuse me? No, it's not. You're asserting the existence of a magical God, and you're doing it on the basis that science can't come up with a natural answer.
Here, that is a classic argument from ignorance. You said that we can't come up with an alternate explanation, and therefore the God of the Bible must be true. I've actually got an alternate explanation. It's the great green Arkle Caesar who sneezed the universe out of his nose, and is nothing like the God of the universe.
That God is inaccessible, so nobody knows about him.
Now we're going to a completely different argument.
Okay, well, he's not inaccessible?
Can I give you one sentence that is a sentence by the most famous lawyer of the 19th century?
Appeal to authority.
Just one quick sentence.
You're just doling out the fallacies like a vending machine,
Please let me read it to you.
Sure.
Every document apparently ancient coming from the proper repository or custody and bearing on its face no evident marks of forgery, the law presumes to be genuine and devolves on the opposing party the burden of proving to be otherwise.
So are you saying that the greatest lawyer in history recognized spectral evidence in court, which was discounted during the Salem witch trials?
All evidence is in play here. You can use anything you want.
Okay, so that guy clearly didn't know much about American law.
Mm-hmm. They say he produced the most jurisprudence of any lawyer,
that may be true, but he still believed in stuff that people at the Salem witch trials were recognizing is invalid legal
standards. I don't know anything about the Salem witch trials. I really don't
obviously
care about
you don't know anything about very much, man. I mean, Troy, we've pointed out every single fallacy that you've brought out, and
I haven't heard one yet.
You have. You've just ignored them. You're now doing the argument from...
I don't know what it is yet. You haven't said it.
Yeah, I explained very clearly, and you know what? Over 1,000 of our viewers heard me tell you what the argument from ignorance was that you were making. Now, if you're sitting here with your fingers in your ears going, nuh-uh, that's on you, man. Yeah. It's not your problem.
I'm sorry, man. Look, I wished you'd called sooner. This could...
I am going to post...
Actually, not really.
I am going to post to the blog exactly, and I'm going to quote him directly, our viewers can decide for themselves whether or not Troy actually knows what he's talking about. But he is just advancing a collection of fallacies. He does not appear to know the difference between what is real and what he is simply imagining, and he doesn't understand what proof is.
Okay,
he makes
and that be our show. And goodbye, everyone.
Thanks for calling anyway, Troy.
Come to Thread Gills or we'll keel haul you. Bye.
Woo. We're out of time.